It is now my great joy to invite up Sheila Canal, who will be offering us our Devar Torah this morning.
Good morning, good Yontif, and Lashana Tova. I don't need these. Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav said that when a shofar, the ram's horn, blows 100 times on Rosh Hashanah, a bridge is formed between heaven and earth. It's significant that we come together as a congregation, a community, to listen to the shofar, to pray together, and to experience the gates between heaven and earth opening. We're called to come to synagogue. And on Rosh Hashanah, we're here, facing God, knowing, as the Avinu Malkeinu prayer repeats and repeats, we have no good deeds. Heaven and earth are coming together. We've done as much repentance, teshuvah, as we possibly can. And still, Avinu Malkeinu says, we have no good deeds. We have our hearts yearning. We have the next 10 days, and we have each other. We support each other in doing the work of the High Holy Days. It's what we've always done in faith, that by coming together and supporting one another, we will experience heaven on earth. We're supported by all the other congregations and communities celebrating Rosh Hashanah all around this world. And we're supported by our ancestors and our descendants' communities too. It takes community and the collective energy of repentance, prayer, and kindness, teshuvah, tefillah, tzedakah, and the primal sound of the shofar that calls forth the bridge to heaven. As Rabbi Julie taught so beautifully last night, Rosh Hashanah is also called Yom Harat HaOlam, the day the world is born. Our family recently has been blessed by the birth of a new child, our first grandchild. Oliver was born 14 weeks ago tomorrow. In 3.5 months, we've seen a lot of changes. It's been a blessing to watch him grow. With the cries and the smiles, there is purity and freshness of a new life, pure light, utterly in the moment, utterly present for what is, no matter what. Listening to words and responding with smiles and coos and gurgling. As I look at him and think about Rosh Hashanah with its urgency, its prayers, the strength of its calling us to do the work, I wonder, can we be like a baby, utterly present for what is, no matter what? Will heaven respond to us with grandmotherly love? It's a mystery. We cannot know. We can only let the purity of our hearts and our prayers on this day and the next 10 days guide us. I was brought up a secular Jew in a Jewish neighborhood in the Bronx. I returned to Judaism as a spiritual path through Thich Nhat Hanh, a venerable Vietnamese Zen Buddhist teacher. He passed away last January. Thich Nhat Hanh encourages his students to return to their root religions and encourages and respects double belonging, being in community and gaining wisdom from both your root religion and Buddhist meditation, study, and practice. It's very rich and connects perfectly to the Jewish practice of Musar, which many of us at TESS, at Temple Emek Shalom, are involved in. Musar is a mindfulness practice that asks us in particular to be aware of how we're relating to others. It's like the Elul practice of self-assessment, and it happens all year long. Are we being self-centered, self-concerned? Are worries, chaos, fears, hastiness, anger causing us to act in ways that are not beneficial? Musar gives us specific antidotes to these specific triggers. Many of us are asking, how do we keep our hearts open in difficult and uncertain times? How do we maintain a sense of well-being when we feel the world is not well? Thich Nhat Hanh offers 3 practices that are a path of peace no matter what is happening around us. The first is to have a personal mindfulness meditation practice. The second, to practice harmony at home. And the third, to nurture and develop a global ethic and spirituality. These 3 threads weave through Judaism and Musar too. Perhaps the vocabulary is different. It's my experience that the outcome is the same, whether it's written in Hebrew, Pali, or Sanskrit. Let us explore each of these threads as they may relate to the spiritual work and healing of these high holy days. The first is meditation, and we can widen the definition of meditation to be conscious awareness, being aware of what's going on inside and around you. Rabbi Julie tells me that a personal practice of prayer is akin to meditation. Both can produce miracles. In my experience, healing is especially sensitive and responds to prayer. I've experienced the power and healing of meditation personally when my husband Mel and I were wanting to become parents. After 15 years of trying, I went on my first meditation retreat and had the time and space and safety to grieve and to look deeply. This opened the way for our son Micah coming into our lives through an open adoption, and now through him, our grandson. I'm so grateful for the healing and power I experienced and still experience through the practice of meditation. Musar also invites us into healing meditative practice. It trains us to take a pause, taking a break when we're triggered especially, taking 1 breath or 2 or 3, to come back to the here and now and be present for ourselves, our triggers, and to let them go. To breathe in compassion for ourselves and breathe out compassion for others. Musar asks us to look at our thoughts, words, and deeds carefully and honestly. It asks us to be aware, to restrain and transform the default of self-preservation, to provide spaciousness to serve others. Serving others is seen as the best way to serve God, the infinite other. Prayer and meditation support this process and are age-old ways to align with God. They allow us to listen to the still small voice. God is found in silence, the silence of meditation and prayer. The second Buddhist practice to cultivate peace in difficult times is harmony at home. This is also a singular Musar practice. In Musar, we are taught to practice with our most intimate others first, to bring order, seder, into the home, have patience, be deliberate and diligent, to speak appropriately, and to trust, to have bitakon. These are some of the midot, the attributes that we study and embody. Thinking about trust as a practice has allowed me to become aware of worry or anxiety without judgment. Oh, there's worry again. Hello, old friend. Is the baby okay? Am I coming across to you all right? Taking worry as a wake-up call, to look at it directly. What's it about? Why am I worrying? Is it real, or is it a habit energy, a knee-jerk conditioning from long ago, perhaps even from ancestors? I can befriend it then, feel gratitude, have compassion for the mind, and turn to trust. If it is something that's authentically worrisome, I can turn to friends, family, my partner, and speak about it. Often saying what's worrying me aloud to my husband, that alone eases my suffering, to be listened to. Sometimes speaking about it leads to solutions. I've discovered that turning towards worry as a wake-up call leads to a softening, a letting go, to understanding, compassion, and equanimity. The third key is nurturing a global ethic and spirituality. What are the 10 Commandments, the wisdom of the Torah, if not global ethics? And what is a global spirituality, if not a messianic view, a horizon of peace and well-being? The rabbis teach about the world as it is and the world to come, Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba. Olam Hazeh is the world as it is, busy with its stresses and strains, the world we know all so well. Olam Haba, the world to come, historically, traditionally, was considered the world we experience as heaven after we die. In Musar, with its roots in Kabbalah, the world to come is believed to be possible in the here and now, by being fully present for ourselves and others, being caring and finding happiness in caring for others. When we're awake to the needs of others and using our own suffering and the suffering of others to awaken, transform, and heal, we are creating the world to come. Musar is all about awakening, making good use of our triggers, training the mind to go beyond self, and finding joy in benefiting others. And it's good to have role models. Thich Nhat Hanh is one. He has many, many teaching stories of using mindfulness to help overcome difficult situations, such as what he experienced and what he navigated through the war in Vietnam. My friend Eddie Hillesum is another role model in creating global spirituality, and she's made a deep impact in my life. Do you know my friend Eddie? She wrote a diary, published as An Interrupted Life. I want to spend the rest of my time this morning lifting up some of what I've learned from Eddie that can inspire resilience in us and connect us to these 3 threads of cultivating the awakened heart and the mind of love in difficult times. Eddie was 27 years old, a Jewish woman living in Amsterdam when the Nazis occupied her country. To ease her anxiety and worries, a friend and counselor advised her to start a diary. She wrote in it for 2 years until she boarded the cattle car with her family for Auschwitz. She died 3 months later. Her diary tracks her pain and her joy, the epiphany she had one evening walking on the bridges of Amsterdam as the sun set, and her faith in the goodness of the world, her service to those around her, and her love of life. That's why I'm bringing her to you, because like Thich Nhat Hanh, in the middle of dire situations, she found peace and acted from peace and love. Eddie was an ordinary young woman, just like us, unique in her own ways. She was avant-garde, had many friends and boyfriends, lived with roommates who were both Christian and Jewish. She became close to God and saw God in all others during the Nazi occupation of her homeland. The underlying message in her diary is that if Eddie could do it, we all can do it. Eddie is close to me now because I found a community that is also inspired by her. 2 peacemakers, one Israeli, one Palestinian, came together over the inspiration they felt from Eddie's diaries and have been using quotes from an interrupted life to create a ritual to heal the trauma of the Holocaust. They have created cards with 100 of Eddie's quotes written in English, Hebrew, and Arabic. This is the 16th year they have been commemorating Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Memorial Day, with Eddie Hillesum quotes. Here is why I consider Eddie a friend and a spiritual ancestor. She tells a story in her diary of going into a pharmacy to buy a toothbrush. She must have been wearing the required Jewish star, that yellow star, although she never mentions that in the diary. Another customer, a man, started following her around, poking at her, telling her she had no right to buy a toothbrush. She bought one anyway. And that day she wrote, "Humiliation always involves 2. The one who does the humiliating and the one who allows himself to be humiliated. If the second is missing, that is, if the passive part is immune to humiliation, then the humiliation vanishes into thin air. If the second is missing, if the passive part is immune to humiliation, then humiliation vanishes into thin air." Now that really got to me. Growing up right after World War II, knowing about concentration camps and Nazis very, very early on, I grew up frightened, ashamed, and humiliated. The effects of the trauma of the Holocaust. And here was Eddie, living through it, standing up to humiliation and shame in spite of the difficult circumstances. She inspired me, opened my mind, gave me another perspective, away from being a victim, and laid the groundwork for trusting the good in the world. Here's another quote. "I am not easily frightened, not because I'm brave, but because I know that I'm dealing with human beings and that I must try as hard as I can to understand everything that anyone ever does." And she wrote, "Life is beautiful and meaningful too. It is meaningful even in its meaninglessness, provided one makes room in one's life for everything and accepts life as an indivisible whole. For then one becomes whole in oneself. The mind of love and the awakened heart is inclusive. It is unconditional. It is understanding that removes divisions, making room in one's life for everything, and accepting life as an indivisible whole, as Eddie says, as many Zen masters say, and as the Kabbalah teaches. We obviously do not have to like everything. It is beyond liking and disliking. Everything is not comfortable. We can even call some things evil. The horrors of war, social and economic injustice, and the environmental degradation. To work for peace, justice, and to end the climate catastrophe, we need to develop our spiritual muscles, our musar muscles, to nurture awakening, knowing we are all in this together, no matter what stripe. We need to serve all others as best we can, including the earth, and can take solace in the Mishnah, in Pirkei Avot, when it advises that you are not required to finish the task, but neither are you free to desist from it. Like Eddie, when we come from a trusting in Tov, trusting the goodness of the world, and align with God, we open up to a deep well of understanding that nourishes us and keeps us from burning out. Going way beyond conventional truth to the expanse of the divine. Eddie served her community coming from these insights and was effective in bringing relief and joy to those around her in very brutal times. That's a global spirituality and a global ethic. In Europe in the 1940s, Eddie also meditated. Here's what she wrote about that. There is a really deep well inside me, and in it dwells God. Often stones and grit block the well, and God is buried beneath. Then he, she, they must be dug out again. And that probably best expresses my own love of life. I repose, she wrote, I rest in myself. And that part of myself, that deepest and richest part in which I repose, is what I call God. God as a placeholder for that richest, deepest part of ourselves that touches the reality of interbeing, interconnection, and peace fully and completely. I'm going to end with another quote from Eddie, and hope you are as inspired as I am with her. This was a quote read in English, Hebrew, Arabic, Dutch, German, Ukrainian, and Russian on April 17th, 2022, Yom HaShoah, commemorating the Holocaust this year. At night, as I lay in the camp on my plank bed, surrounded by women and girls gently snoring, dreaming aloud, quietly sobbing and tossing and turning, women and girls who often told me during the day, we don't want to think, we don't want to feel, otherwise we are sure to go out of our minds. I was sometimes filled with an infinite tenderness and lay awake for hours, letting all the many, too many impressions of a much too long day wash over me and I prayed, let me be the thinking heart of these barracks, the thinking heart of a whole concentration camp. The thinking heart is not the kind of heart that is academic. It's the kind of thinking that is quiet and listens, and as Eddie writes, reestablishes contact with a slice of eternity. This thinking heart is the awakened heart and the mind of love, a heart that is open to the joys and sorrows, the beauty and the horrors, life and death, open to the world as an indivisible whole that includes the good, the bad, and the ugly, open to our own hearts and minds, not turning away from discomfort, looking deeply at it so that we can learn from it, understand it, and have it bring insights that strengthen our faith, our trust, and motivate us to help others. That's my prayer for us, that we all cultivate thinking, open, aware hearts and minds, and serve each other and the world in wholehearted love. As we travel together on the bridge between heaven and earth, may our meditations, prayers, awakenings, and realignments with God connect us to each other, to our tradition, and to the world on these high holy days. May the force of our collective high holy day prayers travel in front of us, creating strength in us and widening our capacity to wholeheartedly heal and transform our uncertain world. May harmony and steadfast commitment to ethics and the divine guide us. May we and the world be written in the book of life. L'Shana Tova.